muted for the duration of the program. And then if you have any questions while you're watching the program, feel free to put them in the chat box, and then Jordan will be able to ask the questions at the end of the program. So if there's anything you guys want to know while you're watching, feel free to add it in that chat box.
Start video. There we go. You want me to just hold it for? So we can just leave it here for right now. Then once we get moving,
I think if you guys just give it one more minute, and it looks like we'll be able to get started. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. Okay, are you guys, can I do my brief introduction and then you guys can take over? Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So again, thank you guys all for coming to the Let's Talk virtual series. We really appreciate that you guys are attending. And like I said before, I know we have a couple classrooms, and that's super cool that you guys are with us. So we're really excited that you guys are here too. So we have Trooper Matt Unterbrink presenting for us today. And so, as I said before, a few housekeeping things. We are recording today's session so we can put it up on YouTube. So just a heads up there. And then you all are muted and will end up staying muted during the duration of the programming. So any questions you have, put them in the chat box and we will answer those at the end. So if you're just now joining us and you haven't had a chance to put your first and your last name in the chat box, if you can do that and we can track attendance, that would be awesome. So quick introduction of Matt before he gets started, excuse me, Trooper Unterbrink. So he started in 2004 at the Coldwater Post. And then in 2007, he went to the 5th District. And 2010, he went to the Metro South Post, which is in Detroit. And he did the Secure City Initiative there. So that was part of a violent crime reduction detail. So when there's hotspots of violent crime throughout that area, they would work in those areas to suppress that. So he did that for 7 years. And then in 2019, he went to the Cadillac Post, which is where he's at currently. So Trooper Unterbrink has a long history with the Canine unit. So that started back in 2010 with Apollo. And so Apollo was his dog that did tracking and narcotics. And super cool fact was that Apollo was part of the arrest of Leo Sharpe. And if that doesn't sound familiar to you, there was the Clint Eastwood movie called The Mule, and that is what that arrest was based on. So Apollo assisted with that. And in 2013, there was Ferb, who did tracking and narcotics. And in 2014, I believe it's Bazzi, and he did explosives, tracking, and found guns and spent shell casings. So Bazzi was actually a legend in the Detroit area. And he actually has a memorial dedicated to him in front of the Metro South Post. So he had located 69 violent criminals and located 68 firearms. So he had worked on numerous homicide cases and officer-involved shooting scenes. So he's very famous in the Detroit area for all of the awesome work that he did. And then in 2019, Arlo worked on explosives. And he was worked with, and then in 2010, he got reassigned to the St. Ignace Post. So he's up even further north. Blue had some health issues, and he was, though, credited with saving 1 life during his career. And he also apprehended 2 suspects. And unfortunately, with his health issues, he passed away in November. Currently, there is Lulu, and she finds explosives. She's a high-trained lab trained to defeat subjects who move explosives on their bodies. And that's kind of similar to like the Boston Marathon bombings. And there's only 5 of these highly skilled dogs out there right now doing that. And then also Ox is currently being trained by Trooper Unterbrink. So he has a ton of experience in canines and all of the things that are involved in that. And so he's going to tell you guys all about that today. So first, I'm going to hand it over to Jordan, who's going to introduce our first poll so we can get to know the audience. And then we'll go from there. So Jordan, if you want to take care of the poll.
Yeah, so we just kind of want to get to know who is joining us today. So if you don't mind answering the poll that is up there right now, that would be awesome.
Presenter, maybe.
All right.
Yeah, you're a host, co-host.
So it looks like we have a lot of multidisciplinary team members, which is cool. Some students, law enforcement, healthcare professionals, child welfare professionals. Very cool. Thank you guys very much. And then one last poll before we hand it over to Matt. We want to know how knowledgeable you are in the subject of canine units and canine teams. All right, so a little sporadic on this one. Very cool. Hopefully you guys will leave a little more knowledgeable than you are now. So at this point, I am going to hand it over to Matt with his trusty sidekick, Dave Pritchard.
Hello, everybody. I've never done one of these over Zoom before, so bear with me. This is Trooper Pritchard. So today we're going to go over canines and how they work alongside law enforcement to help us in our job-related duties. So good part is I actually just got back in town about 2 weeks ago.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
Can you turn the camera around? Right now we just see a vehicle. There we go.
We can't see it. Sure.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, bear with us here.
Can you show our screen, Jordan? Because we can't see what we're filming.
What do you mean? Like you can't see?
Well, yeah, we can't see us. We don't know what we're filming. We just can't see ourselves.
Okay. Because we can see you.
Okay. It's like you can just, we don't know if we're in the film or not. So there you go.
Got it.
Awesome.
Oh, that's better. Yeah.
I got it. Sorry. Yeah, I just got back into town about 2.5 weeks. As Jordan explained, I spent 10 weeks down in Lansing training a new canine. His name is Ox. He is now up and running. He's fully certified. He's my new tracking narcotics dog. My other partner, Blue, unfortunately passed away in November. Blue and I were very attached to one another. So when he passed away, it was kind of a rough go around to emotionally let go of him and have to embrace another partner and begin the training process all over again. It's 10 weeks for a veteran handler to come through and train a new dog. We're required to live in Lansing at our training facility to train those dogs. So my family sacrifices a great deal because I only come home for a short period of time on the weekends. In return, I end up leaving again to go back Monday through Friday and stuff to work with the new dog to get him fully certified out in the field. Lulu is my other partner. Lulu just got certified in July of 2020. So we call Lulu, she's an explosive trailing dog. Lulu has the benefit of not only being able to find explosives that are placed down backpack on vehicles, but she can actually search people that move through crowds that carry explosives on their bodies. We only have 5 of those dogs in our department. And I think as of right now, most of them are actually privately owned through Illich's down in the Detroit area, where they do a lot of the explosive sweeps at their venues. So now we're you guys kind of heard my background. I've been a handler almost 11 years now and a trooper for almost 17. So Trooper Pritchard's going to run the camera. I'm going to go over just some quick basics of some of the equipment and stuff that I carry. Well, we'll follow the PowerPoint right now. So we have two major kennel systems in the United States that the Michigan State Police will purchase canines through. One is in Indiana and one is in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania kennel system is currently brand new. We purchased our first two dogs out of that kennel system just in the school I got back from. Ox is one of those dogs that came from that kennel system. Once our trainers that we have 3 trainers in Lansing, they'll go to these kennel systems and they'll evaluate a multitude of dogs. I think when they went out to Pennsylvania, they evaluated 40 dogs. They selected 2 out of the 40. Those 2 dogs were then transported to Michigan State University, where they underwent a thorough medical evaluation. At that point in time, they're put up before the prospective handlers to select based off of seniority. Out of those dogs and stuff, I was the second one to pick, and I ended up choosing Ox once he had passed his thorough medical evaluation. And then I myself had evaluated him for personality trait fits to myself. So to become a handler, you already have to be a state trooper and have gone through the recruit school. You have to have at least a year and a half into the department before you can even be interested in submitting an application to become a canine handler. Your first job, once you submit your application to try and join the canine unit, is you have a 3-mile cross-country run that's timed. Some people look at that, it's a 3-mile cross-country run. It is grueling. When they run them in the winter time, we will run you through frozen swamp water. At times you will have to crawl on your hands and knees for this cross-country run. You will run up and down overpasses and through woods and down streets. It simulates a real-life track of what you would do. When you're initially going through it as a prospective handler, you're like, why am I running through a swamp? Why am I crawling on my hands and knees? When you get out in the real world, you're like, I see it now. If you're accepted into the canine unit, you're to become a basic handler. Once you're accepted, you're given a post assignment. The majority of us have to move unless there's an opening at your home post. You will go through 14 weeks to become a canine handler through that school. There's extensive book work involved with it, with more thorough case law and stuff regarding canines. And then the rest of it will be you bonding with your canine and teaching it or certifying it in those areas of responsibility. You can go ahead and flip the slide. So all of our dogs will be trained, our patrol dogs, I should say. This is what Ox is trained in. Tracking. Tracking is when a subject, whether it's a suspect or it could be an elderly person that had dementia that walked away from the house. The dogs are trained to follow that scent pattern to locate that person. All of our dogs are trained in a bark response at the end. They are not find and bite, they are find and bark. Area search goes along with tracking. If a person has been missing for days at a time, we're not going to be able to establish a track on that person to follow it from point A to point B where they're at. For the area searches, we'll use the wind to our benefit, and dead skin cells will come off the human body, and with the wind that will push that downwind, the dogs are able to smell those dead skin cells from a significant distance away, sometimes almost a quarter mile, depending on how hard the wind is blowing. The dog is trained to pick up that scent path and pull us to that person. Property search, I guess the best way that I could put that is, and we've all done this, where we've walked through our yard and maybe dropped our car keys. Well, those car keys have dead skin cells on them that come off of your hands. Our dogs are trained to go out and find those items from the dead skin cells that your body leaves on that object. So the detector area, For our canines, Ox is trained in narcotics. Some of my prior dogs, or Lulu, she's trained for detective area and explosives. We also have cyber dogs, 2 of them in the state of Michigan. They're small labs. Cyber dogs are trained to find computer external hard drives or thumb drives based off of the glue. The glue is the odor that the dogs detect. So the glue that holds those electronic devices together is what the dogs smell. Those dogs will come in and work with our computer crimes to find those hard drives or thumb drives. We also have arson dogs that are trained to find accelerants. If a house has been burnt down and they feel it may have been arson, where someone intentionally set fire to it, those dogs are able to go in and pinpoint the locations for the arson investigators to pull samples to determine what accelerant was used to start that fire. So if you went into a building and you poured gasoline on the floor and you set fire to it, those dogs would be able to search through all the burned rubble and pinpoint that spot where that subject had poured gasoline at. All our dogs are trained to apprehend people. Generally, it's for only violent felony offenses. They're all trained in obedience, to respond to our commands, come back when we call them. That stuff is pretty basic. We'll also train the dogs to do building searches. So say if somebody's house or school got broken into and they felt subjects were still inside, we can use the dogs as a forward locating tool and send them in. They'll find those subjects and they will alert a final bark response as to where they're at. At that point in time, we can move through and arrest those people. So these are just some short videos. We can play a couple seconds of it. This is my training with Ox that I just recently completed. This is one of his first 10 initial training tracks. You can kind of see the footsteps through the grass. So you can see the process is very slow when you're teaching them. You have to have a lot of patience and you have to be very positive with it. Sometimes you don't look at leaps and bounds of training the dogs. You look at small positive things out of it, and then you build on that repetitively. In return, you can flip to the next video. That was one of his first 10 tracks. When we switch to the next one, you can see this is 40 tracks in now. Now you can see how 40 tracks into it will vary from 10 tracks. Now at this point in time, he understands what he's doing. And this is actually, he's following a scent path where someone had walked. They had laid this track for me. And then I go through and I run it with Ox, and we do this repetitively as training tracks. With each track, it becomes more complicated and more complex for the dog. For this one, we incorporated a road crossing into it. And I really like to call tracking. Tracking is more of an art form than it is an exact science. Although there's a lot of science that goes into it, because the dog is actually tracking chlorophyll gas from the ecological odor. As a person walks in the grass, that plant material will break open and it releases chlorophyll gas. That chlorophyll gas is what we train or teach the dogs to track. Because for every footprint, there's a new scent pad where the chlorophyll gas is emitting out of that vegetational material. There's also some dead skin cells that are coming off the human body as they walk and move. If a person begins to run, more dead skin cells are emitted and given off. So for our canine unit right now, we have 36 handlers. We have 56 canines spread throughout. That may vary in stuff from the last time I got those statistics. We only have a few multidisciplined canine handlers throughout the state. I'm one of them. We also have guys that will run maybe a tracking narcotics dog and also run a cadaver dog, or we'll have the guys that will run tracking explosive dogs, and they'll also have a cyber dog. So for some of us that have a little bit more experience out in the field, we're a little more well-versed with training the dogs, they'll assign us extra duties and give us a secondary dog and stuff to handle while we're out in the field. Jordan, we can open it up to some questions now.
All right, so yeah, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Matt, I didn't know if while we're waiting for questions to get through, if you wanted to maybe show the dogs or whoever you've got in the building with you while we wait for those questions. I'll let you know when some get in there.
What I'll do is I'm gonna take like 2 minutes. I'm gonna run out to my car. I'm going to grab Ox and show the first demonstration of an exterior vehicle search. I'll put him back and I'll grab Lulu.
So while he does that, if you guys don't mind putting your questions into the chat, that would be awesome. And then when the demonstrations are done, we will go ahead and ask Trooper Unterbrink those questions and get answers for you. And if you are a school group that's on, feel free to ask your kiddos what questions they would want answered, and I will make sure that we get those answered first. I think I remember one individual on here who has a classroom, so I'll make sure that I answer those questions because I know you guys might not be able to stay on for the whole time.
Okay, Jordan, I'm going to try to switch the camera back around.
All right, let's see how this goes.
Hey.
You're good.
Good? Matt?
Yep. Yeah, and then tell Matt to kind of speak up a little bit so that we can kind of hear what he's doing. That'd be awesome.
Okay. I can try to narrate. So what he does is that's a particular collar that Trooper Unterbrink puts on his canine to know that he's looking for narcotics. And the dog will sit when there's an indication of narcotics. Maybe, see, there you go. That's their indication. That he's going to gets rewarded. Gets his toy.
Good boy. Good job. Good boy. So what do you guys as a reward? You're not going to be able to hear me from the squeaking, but good job, buddy.
I was translating that for it, but you can tell them more.
So what his final response at the end, we call it a focus sit response. As you can see, when he finds odor, he sits down and he stares directly at the strongest source. So that's what we call a focus sit response. All of our dogs are trained with a focus sit response instead of being aggressive where they scratch or paw or claw at it and cause damage. And you can see this is a game to him. And even though he has his ball, he's actually still searching to find that odor that he already found because it's fun. So he associates fun with a reward from it. Oh, good boy. Good. Good.
So we did have a question. What breed of dog is Ox?
What? Did you hear that?
Yep. Ox is a Malinois Shepherd cross. The majority of our dogs are German Shepherds. We do have 7 of these Malinois Shepherd crosses. They tend to be a little healthier than the full German Shepherd.
Okay.
So she is 18 months old right now, and there's a lot of puppy in her, so.
It's so cute. So we also have another question.
Okay.
Are the dogs bred?
Hey.
Are the dogs bred in kennel programs, or are they donated to the program?
Hey, Matt, are the dogs purchased by the department?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
You able to hear that? Yeah, they're purchased by MSP. Sorry for the close-up.
Ox was $8,500.
Okay, Ox was $8,500.
Lulu was $4,000.
And Lulu was around 4,000.
And they are untrained.
And they're come untrained.
Okay. And then is there an age limit for the dogs that come into the program? Like, do they have to start out young so that you can train them, or can you get older dogs and still train them?
I'll defer to Matt, but I'm pretty confident they come in untrained. Absolutely. They don't take any retired dogs from other departments or anything like that. And they'll age out or even in their service, just like a regular police officer. If they have an injury, anything like that, or they need to be taken out of service if they're sick, and then they will purchase a new dog to train.
Gotcha. I'll ask the others when Matt comes back. I don't want to put you on the spot too much.
Hey, throw them at me. See what I
got. What personality traits do you look for when picking a new dog?
Oh yeah, that's a good one for Matt. You're right. Yeah, every I can tell you, I've in my 26 years, so I've seen a lot of dog handlers. They all have different personalities, every one of them. And so that Matt touched on that earlier. They want, their dog's personality to match the trainer. So I could have him expound, but here he comes with his other canine.
We do a lot of training on lockers. So when I go to different venues, sporting venues, there's always lockers everywhere. It's for the sports players' equipment, or if we have to get called to a school to do a search of a school for an explosives threat. So that's what this one will kind of assimilate.
So one question, Matt, they had was, you mentioned earlier you looked for a certain personality of a dog to match yours, kind of?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're going upstairs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Hope we stay connected here. We'll find out. Still with us, Jordan?
We're still good.
Okay. Oh, good. Awesome. Matt, is this an explosive search here?
This is.
Okay.
Yep. Good girl. girl. Good job. Good girl.
So we do have some questions from the kiddos that are on.
Yeah, go ahead.
What happens if the bad guy is wearing a hazmat suit? Can the dog still track them?
Did you hear that? If a suspect's wearing like a hazmat suit, could they still be tracked by a dog?
Yes, because when we initially train the dogs to track, it's the chlorophyll gas. So if you were to walk across like any type of ecological or plant material or through a woods, that plant material breaks. It releases chlorophyll gas. And that is one of the things that the dogs are trained to track.
And they also—
So not necessarily the person, maybe, but the scent of the terrain. Okay, yep. George, go ahead.
They also wanted to know if you've ever trained a small dog.
Well, Lulu is the smallest dog that I've ever trained. She's, when I first got her, she was only about 50 pounds, but she's the smallest dog that I've ever trained. So I do have a dash hound at my house, but I would, he's a little too old to train. He just likes to lay around and sleep a lot, so.
And earlier they asked, the dogs come untrained, right? When they're purchased, yep.
Yep.
And what age can a dog retire?
So generally the dogs will, it's not so much based on age, it's based off of how they're doing physically. Some dogs will have to retire out earlier due to illnesses or injuries. And some dogs, just kind of like people, they just kind of reach the end of their service time and physically they just can't meet the job requirements anymore. But most of our dogs and stuff will retire out from service between like 8 and 9 years old.
And do the dogs still do normal naughty dog things?
They do. Yep, they will still do all the silly stuff that normal dogs will do. And sometimes they have their days and stuff just like us where they may not wake up feeling the greatest. And that's where we have to come in as handlers and help them through those times. And then we have days at work where maybe we don't feel the best either. And the nice part is the dogs can kind of pick up our slack on those days. So they're a lot like people. They have their good days and they have their bad days.
So I have a question, Jordan, for Matt. Do you carry both canines at the same time?
I do. Yep, both of the dogs are in the car with me all the time. So depending on whatever it is I need to respond to, I have both dogs with me. They don't interact with one another. There's a metal divider between the two dogs in the car, and it's all temperature controlled for them. So if it gets too hot, the windows will roll down and fans will come on to cool them off. So.
And I have a question. Where do the dogs go after their work day? Like, who do they stay with?
So all of our dogs and stuff, we have a kennel housing system out behind our house that's all fenced in. If it starts to get too cold at night, like lately it has been, I bring them inside the house and I have kennels in my house. So my wife and kids are pretty forgiving to me because sometimes they have to pick up the slack, help clean up after them, or help me let them out because they're inside the house. But the majority of the time they will stay outside. It acclimates their body to the working conditions. So if it's hot outside, they're already used to it. Kind of like us, if we sit in air conditioning all day, all of a sudden we go outside and it's 90 degrees outside and it's 100% humidity, we're really tired. We're not used to being able to perform at a high level in that type of weather. So the dogs are used to it.
We have another question from the group of students that are joining us. What is the most exciting or funny story of you tracking a suspect with the dogs?
Oh, exciting or funny story? That's a good one. So I had one guy when I first got up here, I tracked him with Blue, the one that just recently passed away. And as we were coming up to him, I identified myself as a police officer. And he turned around and he looked at me and he put his arms out like this. And from his feet, he fell flat on his face. just kind of right on his face and just laid there. I thought he was going to put his hands down to catch himself, but he just left them right out and just fell right on his face. So there are times where in that situation, I did kind of start laughing a little bit because I didn't expect that. So.
Can you give us, so I know you've said that Lulu tracks explosives on the person. Can you give us kind of what your day would look like at, say, Cherry Festival? What exactly you guys would do as soon as you guys got there?
So really what we would do is we would probably, before we get to those events, you evaluate spots where you would call them hot spots or large area people where they would conglomerate. So we'll say if there was going to be an air show, we would probably go to the main gate that everybody is walking through to get into the air show to watch it. And we would work that main gate. So as people would walk through, we would walk in between them as they walked in. That way we maximize the amount of people that we can search that might be carrying something as they're going in. Another way we could do it, which we've done it before, is we'll actually walk the sidewalks or large crowded areas when they have the Christmas tree lighting downtown. I'll walk with another officer and we'll just commingle in the crowd. So those are a couple of situations that we would go about it. We can go back downstairs.
Okay.
So as we walk downstairs, guys, feel free to put in any other questions you might have, and we will ask them once they go down. All right, we have another question. So who gets to name the dogs? That's a very good question.
Oh, yeah.
Over the years and stuff, my family, I always incorporate them into naming the dogs. My kids actually came up with Lulu for Lulu the Labrador. My daughter designed her collar that you can see her name on it. Labs have to wear a thicker collar. It can't be a narrow one because they're prone to esophagus injuries. So they can't just wear the chains and stuff around their necks. And she's actually trained to pull me. So when that pressure gets applied on the collar, it's distributed out so it doesn't cause any injury to her. So Ox, when he came from overseas, his name was already Ox. And when I got him, just looking at him and his personality and his body type, it seemed to fit him. So he's about 18 months old. I'm guessing he'll probably put on another 10 pounds. So Ox just kind of fit him. All my other dogs and stuff, my family is taking an effort in and helping me name them because even though they are owned by the state, they're a big part of our family. So
it looks like the Kingsley fifth graders are leaving, but your daughter wants to say, "Hi, Dad. Thanks for giving me credit for the collar."
There you go.
We also have another question. Is it easier to track in the winter or the summer?
So in the winter time, you have different variables that you have to take into consideration. So you're not going to get that ecological odor that's going to be coming off the plants because they're in a dormant state. So if it's deeper snow, you're going to be able to follow those footprints, one for yourself visually, but what you can run into is if the temperature tends to get extremely cold, those dead skin cells will freeze. And on those dead skin cells is the bacteria that causes the odor, which is your own body odor. And if it gets too cold, those will freeze. And if there's no footprints, you're not going to be able to establish a track. But generally at those temperatures, what I have ran into more in the past is the dog's pads will actually start to freeze up or it'll start to affect their nose. So those are a couple of conditions that you have to take into effect. No different, say the summertime, if a suspect runs and a torrential rainstorm comes through and we get a lot of rain in a very short period of time, it'll run, it will wash that scent picture away. And I've had that before in the past where I was actually actively tracking the suspect and a rainstorm came through and it was really, really hard. And it lasted a long time. And my dog, Apollo, was tracking and he just picked his head up and he just kind of looked at me like it's not there anymore. So weather will play a huge role in it, so will wind. And over time, the more you do it, you'll become accustomed to being able to read your dog in high wind situations to have more success. So, but it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of field work to be able to do that. I don't think anybody could ever look and say that right off the bat with their jobs within the first year or two, they were good at what they were doing. And after 11 years, every time I go out and run a call, I'm still learning something. So it's a constant process.
Gotcha. I know you talked about how much the dogs each cost, but where do you initially get the dogs from? Is there a specific place that you get those dogs and purchase them?
The two kennel systems here in the United States, those are the two specific places that we'll get the dogs from. They will actually send their kennel staff or brokers out overseas to the Czech Republic or Hungary or Germany or Holland. And then they will select dogs out of these major kennel breeding systems to bring back to the US.
And how many hours of training do you do with the dogs each week?
So once a week, we get 1 8-hour training day to hone their skills and keep them sharp. Or with Ox and Lulu, they're both newer dogs. I'll spend over 8 hours. That time is just, we call it VOT. It's like voluntary overtime. But if you work more with the dogs, you get a better result. So once a week, we have an established 8 hours to train with them. You can put in extra time during the week and stuff. I know my bosses here at the Post are pretty good, and I do tend to do extra stuff during the week, during my work shift or after hours with the dogs to make them better. But it's a minimum 8 hours every week that we get.
All right, I think those are all the questions we have. Is there anything else, Trooper Unterbrink or Trooper Pritchard, that you guys would like to add before we launch that last poll?
Nope, I brought in some of the equipment and stuff that we would use. So this is actually the harness that Lulu would wear if we were searching crowds. What this does is over time with the dogs and their collars, they begin to associate what you want them to do with the job task. So when I put this on her, she knows that, okay, it's time to start searching people. Not in an invasive type way where she would go up and sniff your body, but she would know to keep her head up higher in the air to be able to hit those odors and stuff that would come off their body. So this is Lulu's harness. For Ox, this is his tracking harness that he would put on if we were going to go look for somebody. You're noisy. This little pouch on the top is actually a GPS tracking device so that my coworkers or some of the county dispatch centers, if I lose my backup, they can pull me up on a computer screen and they can watch me move in the woods to be able to keep track of me. And then this, a lot of us will go through canine medical classes. Some of them can be a little bit more intense than others, that if one of the dogs get hurt, I know up here for some of my areas, it might take me an hour and a half running lights and sirens to get the veterinarian care. So we carry everything to be able to stop traumatic bleeding in the dog, to be able to reduce overdoses or accidental poisonings with rat poisoning. We carry stuff to be able to reverse those effects. And then be able to splint broken limbs and stuff while we're out in the field. So I actually have some other items in here where if I needed to establish an airway, I can establish a separate airway for the dog and stuff for them to, if one of their airways gets damaged. that's what I've got. If anybody else has any other questions.
I know, Matt, some departments purchase bulletproof vests for their canines. Is that something we have?
In the past, we've gotten them. So there's pros and cons to those vests. You have to remember, once you put that vest on, there is no breathability. There is no breathability in that vest for the dog. So they're already wearing a winter coat. And if it's summertime, you have to remember that vest can only be on for a short duration type time period. Otherwise, you yourself, you're going to inflict harm on that dog by causing him to go into heat stress or heat shock from it. So there's times and places for them. We do not run those vests on our dogs and stuff from what I had just said. Even if it's a 40-degree day outside, for a lot of us, if you're an active runner, you know you can go running in 20, 30-degree weather and you can stay warm wearing light clothing. If you strap a thick vest that has no breathability to it on a dog, even in colder weather, you can cause them to go into heat shock at a very quick rate. So there are pros to them. You also have to kind of remember the opposite side of it too. So.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you to Dave for assisting with the camera and everything.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm going to run this last poll. So we want to see, very similar to one that we launched earlier. Now that you've seen the presentation, how knowledgeable are you on canine units and teams?
You will say, yeah, Google Play.
All right, quite a bit more knowledgeable. That's awesome to see. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We will have a recording of this on our YouTube channel. So if you missed it or know anybody who is interested in seeing it, point them in the direction of the Traverse Bay CAC's YouTube page. And we will have those up for you. We will also be putting links for our other presentations we have scheduled throughout this year on our website, traversebaycac.org. And I'm sure if you have any additional questions, I can shoot them over to Trooper Unterbrink and he can answer them for you. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Dave and Matt. I'm sure we will be talking soon.
All right.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks.